So now that we've built our about page and our home page, now it's the time to make everything responsive. So let's go to our home page and start creating responsive design. So the first thing we're going to do is select our hero stack and let's right click on it, and then let's create component. Let's call it hero or whatever you would like, and then click create. Now let's change variant 1 to desktop. And now let's duplicate desktop, Control+D, and change variant 2 to tablet. And let's change the width to 810 pixels. Now let's also duplicate the tablet version, Control+D, and then let's change variant 3 to mobile or phone. Yeah, phone is better. Now let's change the width to 390 pixels. 390 pixels. Now you can see the things start to get a little messy, but don't worry, we're going to fix that. So let's start with the tablet version. It looks quite the same as the desktop version, but let's change the padding settings. So let's select the tablet version, the tablet variant, and let's change the right and left padding to 48 pixels. And let's also change the main heading size to 72 pixels. And let's change the width to about 500 pixels. And let's change the line height to 1.1. Let's leave the gap in the center stack at 24, and maybe we'll change the height of our hero stack to 600 pixels. Now let's go to the phone version, the phone variant, and let's change the right and left padding to 16 pixels. And then let's change the heading to 40 pixels. And let's change the width to, let's try 300, 250. And let's also, let's also change the subheading. Instead of 542 pixels, let's change that to fill. And now let's select our CTAs stack and let's change the direction to vertical, and let's select each of the buttons and change the width to fill, just like that. And let's give each button a little more padding, a little more top and bottom padding. So instead of 6, let's try 12, or let's try 16. 16 from the top and 16 from the bottom. Yeah, that looks great. And maybe we'll change the gap in the center stack to 32. No, I think that's too much. Let's leave that at 24. Yeah, I think we're good for now. So let's move on. Now let's move on to the next section, which is work. So let's select our work stack and right click and create component. Next, let's choose create. Now let's change variant 1 to desktop, duplicate it, and change variant 2 to tablet. And now let's change the width to 810. And then let's change the padding. Let's change the padding to 48. Just like this. And now it's getting too tight around here. So maybe we can change the direction to vertical instead of horizontal. And let's change the distribute property to start. And let's change the gap to 24 pixels. And let's remove the max width property from our heading, from our main heading. And also let's change the max width property. Let's remove the max width property from our subheading, just like that. And let's change the width of our main heading to, let's try 400 pixels. And also here let's change our subheading width to 400 pixels. And let's change the align property to left, like this. Now we can just leave the grid as it is, or you know what, let's change the height of the grid items. Right now I think they're a bit too tall, so instead of 600, let's try 400 or 450. Yeah, I think it works. I think it looks great. And now we can move on to our phone version. So let's duplicate it and change variant 3 to phone. Now let's change the width to 390. And now things get a little messy, but don't worry, we're going to fix that. Let's change the heading width to fill, and the subheading also to fill. And let's change the size of the heading to 32 pixels. We need to also change it here instead of 72. Let's change that to, let's try 64. So 64 here, and our subheading remains at 16 pixels. That's fine. And let's select our phone variant and change the padding to 16 pixels. Now let's change our grid. Right now it doesn't work on mobile, on our phone version. So let's change the number of columns to 1. And now we have 1 column and 4 rows. Let's change the height of the grid items to 300 pixels. And now we can move on to our next section, which is services. So let's select services from our home page and right click and create component. Let's change variant 1 to desktop. Now let's duplicate our desktop variant and let's change variant 2 name to tablet and change the width to 810 pixels. Let's change the right and left padding to 48 pixels. And now let's select our top stack and change the direction property to vertical and the distribute property to start, with a gap of 24 pixels between items. Now let's open up our service item component and let's create a size variable for our main heading texts. So from the right panel, let's click where it says size, and let's create a variable which we will call main heading font size. Now let's go back to our tablet variant, and now we can change the main heading font size to 32 pixels. So we're going to need to do it for the rest of our items here. So 32, I think it looks great. Let's open the preview, and I think it looks and works great. So now let's duplicate our tablet version and create our phone version, our phone variant. Let's change the width of our phone variant to 390. And now let's change the padding to 16 pixels. The next thing we're going to do is to change the font size of our main heading here to 32 pixels. And let's change the gap between items here at the top stack to 16 pixels. Let's select our container stack and change the gap between items to 48 pixels. Let's decrease the height of this image. Let's make it smaller. I think around 300 pixels looks great. Now the next thing we're going to do is to take our accordion stack, cut it, and paste it right here outside. So now we can grab the service item instances and detach instance. So let's remove the rest of the items right here. And now let's select service item, right click, and let's create a new component. This will be service item mobile or phone, whatever you would like. So let's change variant 1 to open. Let's select our top stack and select no on our wrap option right here. And let's change the distribute property to start and change the direction to vertical. Then let's select our heading stack and change the width to 1 FR. And let's select the number and remove the max width property. Now let's change the gap between items on our top stack to 16 pixels. The next thing we're going to do is select the bottom stack, change the direction property to vertical, then select the content stack, change the width to 1 FR, then let's select the tag stack and remove the max width property. Now let's select the bottom stack and change the distribute property to start and change the gap between items to 16 pixels. Now let's duplicate the open variant and change variant 2 to closed. Now in our closed variant, let's select the bottom stack and change the opacity to 0. And then let's select our primary layer right here and change the height to 130 pixels. The next thing we're going to do is to select our open variant and use this icon to create a new interaction and drag it to the closed variant. And we want the interaction to be on click. Now we will do the opposite by selecting our closed variant and connect to navigate to our open variant. And the interaction is on click. Now let's take a look and see the preview. Looks great. Now it's time to move on. Let's go back to our services component. Now let's cut the accordion stack and paste it inside our container, just like this. And let's remove the interaction right here. And let's open up the preview. As you can see, it works and looks pretty great. But now let's open up this component again and let's make everything here dynamic. So we'll start with the number. Let's select the number and let's click right here where it says content, and let's create a plain text variable. We'll call this number, not amount. Now let's select our main heading and make it a variable, a plain text variable. So we'll call it just title, that's fine. Now let's select our tags and also create a variable. We'll start with the first tag and then click on content, create variable, plain text, and then let's change title 2 to tag number 1. And I will do the same process for tag number 2, tag number 3, tag number 3. Now let's select our content text layer and create a plain text variable, but we want to click yes on text area and we want to change the name to content. So now let's go back to our services component and duplicate service item 4 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's make sure all of these 4 are closed. And now we can change the texts, and I will do that, and I will see you at the end of the process. So now I've added all of the texts. Let's open the preview and see how it looks. I see I have the same texts right here. Don't worry, I'm going to fix that. But everything looks and works great. The next thing we're going to do is select our footer row and let's change the direction to vertical. And let's change the distribute property to start with a 16 pixels gap. And let's change the button to fill. The width should be fill. And let's change the padding from the top and bottom to 16 pixels. Let's also increase this text right here to 16 pixels. And that's it for the services component.